Business Podcast. And thank you for listening and joining us today, wherever you're listening or viewing our session today. So today we're going to look at some of the issues that small business owners and medium business owners have everywhere, and that is cost of transactions and the security around your transactions. So we're particularly looking at more and more of our payments for business are coming on credit card, and we've got issues with security and fraud, and how do you control your employees' spending? And then we've got the other one, which we're going to address a lot more detail today, and that is the hidden transaction fees and the foreign currency fees when you're paying for your subscriptions using a card. So foreign currency is one of those sleeping costs, which is really eating into your profit as a business. And we're going to have a look at how we can reduce those costs and put more on your bottom line, more profit back into your business and more cash into your pocket. And joining me today to explore how we can achieve this is Henry Broad from Airwallex. So Henry, welcome to the podcast and the video. Great to have you with us. Who are Airwallex?
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul, and very happy to be here today. Who is Airwallex? What is Airwallex? We're a business that's been around for about 6 years now, and we started with humble beginnings in Melbourne. So how it began was there were four co-owners, or four owners rather, all finished university, all went into business banking to their certain extent, and but also had a side hustle at the same time, owning a coffee shop in Melbourne. So next time you go down there, I highly recommend that you check it out. But while they were running that coffee shop, one thing that they found quite easy to do was import goods from overseas for their coffee shop, things like custom-made keep cups. But some things that they found difficult was paying their suppliers who were based over in China. And what they discovered quickly, not just through their own studies, but also just through their own experiences, is that traditional banking isn't really set up well to support those small to medium businesses who want to be able to operate more efficiently that way. What typically happens is, if you're using a bank, in order to send funds to suppliers overseas, you'd obviously have to go through intermediary banks in order for your funds to land from your bank account to your supplier's bank account, as simple as it sounds. So what they discovered was, hey, with everything that's happening with technology today, with everything with the growth of Fintech, how about we get into this game and set up an ecosystem where you can simply just submit funds to this cloud or to this ecosystem and pay down those suppliers that you need to at a later date. And that's how Airwallex came around. Initially, it was designed to sort of help with just paying out those supply side of things. But the more we start to think about where funds come and go in small to medium businesses, it's a whole bigger challenge altogether. So no longer are we just thinking about smart, cheap, really quick FX payments, but also thinking about, like what you said beforehand, how can we manage business expenses that are occurring on a monthly basis to every small to medium business? How can we empower our employees to spend more efficiently for our business? And how can we also help you scale? These are all things that we hear on a daily basis from our customers, and things which Airwallex can actually come to the table and help with businesses.
So Airwallex is really one of those successful small, medium businesses that grew from a small beginning, dealing with a real business issue that is common to a lot of businesses. But you've not just addressed the one issue, you've actually taken a number of pain points and you've fixed those. But you started with that first thing, which is the core thing of foreign transaction fees. Now, I know from dealing with clients trying to import that organising foreign currency is a nightmare. You've got to go open a separate bank account. That's if you can. You've got to get business banking in place. You've got to have who has access to that bank account, which currency are you operating in, what's the exchange rate when you're transferring to and from. There's a lot of headache there, and if you don't manage it, all of a sudden you've got some pretty big hits to your profit from all these exchange fees and bank fees for transactions. So how does Airwallex actually address that core issue? Because that's a big hit to the bottom line for most business owners.
Yeah, like you mentioned a couple of headaches there, and I'll get to cost in a second. But like the first one's time, like your time as a business owner dealing with a bank, setting up these accounts, whether it be in Australia or if you are a business that's lucky enough to operate internationally, like dealing with all those intermediaries can be quite a headache. So that's the first thing is time. The second there is obviously speed. So being able to obviously do that as quickly as possible, and then cost. So, which is obviously the hot topic that comes up when it comes to dealing with these sort of transactions. Because we're not a brick and mortar business, because we are a technology first business, it takes away a lot of those traditional payment structures that have been existing for such a long time. So that we're no longer dealing with people to people. It's actually just dealing with a technology platform. So once a business is up and running using Airwallex, they'll be able to instantaneously have access to all features on the platform. And then what that means is when leveraging the platform, whether it be sending FX payments, paying subscriptions with cards, or their employees traveling around the world with our Airwallex cards, they're getting the cheapest rate in the marketplace. So it'd be two things. It'd be because we're using technology is why we're driving around that cost. And it'd also be because we're not a brick and mortar business. We're actually just a technology business dealing in the finance space.
Mm. So one of the things you mentioned there, which I think most small business owners would love to hear, is that's the speed and ease of setting up an account with Airwallex. Because I know through our experience of setting up our own account with Airwallex, it was so much easier than opening a new bank account with our existing bank.
Yeah, absolutely. I predominantly deal with accountants. So I deal with most of them around Australia, and I've heard some pretty rough stories in terms of trying to set up accounts. And probably the most powerful one was there was a client of theirs that wanted to actually come to Australia and set up a local bank account in Australia. So offering that service to their clients, and the experience that they had wasn't great. So they were dealing with one of the big four banks. They wanted a specific type of documentation to set up the bank account. So the whole dealing of back and forth with that bank, I think it took them about 14 weeks in order to just go back and forth, because by the time they submitted all the documentation, a lot of it was out of date. And then secondly was the cost that was associated just with themselves doing it. Like an accountant's time is very precious, as in fact everyone's time is quite precious at the moment. So just that whole headache of going back and forth and dealing with that, it was quite costly. In fact, it cost them, they calculated to be about $5,000 of their time spent out dealing just with that interaction with the bank. So because again, we're a technology business, you can simply just submit documents online through our portal, which we have a team based in Australia that can actually go through that compliance for you, which can take up to 5 business days to turn around. Once that's sorted, then your account is live and you have access to all features available.
Yeah, that's great, because we had I've just had an experience where 14 weeks. If I had my client have to wait 14 weeks to open up a new bank account or open up a facility where they could purchase or pay for imports, they've just capitalized on a business opportunity that came up, and they needed to act on it within a week or 2 weeks. And so if you have to wait 14 weeks to open your facility so you can transact, you're going to miss that opportunity. And for them, it was a highly lucrative opportunity, but the timing was crucial. So having to wait 14 weeks would have killed off that opportunity, killed off that profit. And they would have been left fuming as a result. So the timing is important. Now, you mentioned that it's not a bank. So how secure is Airwallex?
Yeah, great question. So we do have to have in each market that we operate in. So obviously we are aiming to have that global presence. No matter where we work, we have to adhere to the local financial services rules and regulations, have to have an appropriate license for that region as well, or that country. So in Australia, for example, we have an ANFSL. We have to adhere to all rules with AUSTRAC. But also we partner with local banks in those countries for multiple purposes. Obviously, so that we can facilitate our services. But let's say for Australian businesses that sign up in Australia, because we're not a bank, we actually don't leverage those funds for operational purposes. We don't accrue interest on those funds in their account. Because we partner with a bank in Australia, we actually set up what was called a client segregated trust account, where those funds are safely stored in that account. So in Australia, that's with ANZ. And the reason, again, is from what I just mentioned, but also because if something was to happen to Airwallex, those funds can safely be distributed back to our clients at a later date. So that's purely just to hold on to those accounts, to those funds until the client needs to distribute those funds at a later date. And that's what we do for each region when a local business wants to set up with in that country. It would be set out with that appropriate bank and have the funds, situated in that trust account.
Yeah, that's really good to know, and really comforting that it is secure. I think when we're dealing with an online or a technology company, one of the first concerns is, well, how safe is my money?
Yeah,
not just how easy is it to transact, but how safe.
Yeah, and look, like we're in the fintech space, and fintech inherently is high risk, and because we're a new player in the marketplace, we get scrutinized and taken through sort of as much process as possible by the regulators, if not more, compared to banks. So for us, it's really important that we are compliant. So it's not just to deal with where funds are stored, but it's also where funds come and go. Like we monitor everything quite closely so that we are as compliant as possible, and can obviously raise the bar in terms of what a good fintech looks like when it comes to that security perspective.
So that's all comforting. So if I've got employees and I want to give my administrator or my bookkeeper access to do transactions, can I limit how much control they have and how what they can see? Can I limit that?
Yeah, of course. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it was just the other day I was having this conversation where the business owner was having photocopies of their card, and they were handing out the photocopies to their card to their employees and using that as like a way to pay for things online. One of the employees lost a piece of paper, and so he had to cancel his card, had to get a new card, do photocopies again, but then all the subscriptions and things that they were paying for, it was just a nightmare. So with us, once the account is active, you can actually set up the account hierarchically. So there could be an account admin who can have control of the platform and designate cards out to employees that require a card. From there, they have ample control over how employees can spend and use their cards. So anything from monthly limits, transaction limits, daily limits, or no limits altogether, depending on what's important to them. They can simply set up these cards instantaneously. And similarly, as quickly as setting them up, we can also freeze and close these cards at a click of a button. But the kicker is that these cards are multi-currency Visa debit cards, which can be leveraged anywhere that Visa is available. So thinking more broadly around, if you're a small business in Sydney, you've got employees that are around the world, you can actually distribute these virtual cards to those employees at a click of a button.
Yeah, look, I really love the card feature for Airwallex. There's a couple of things that really we get, excited. An accountant getting excited is probably not a great thing, but look, you mentioned the fraud issue, or the security concerns with the photocopied credit card. We had not through anything that we had done, but one of our business credit card got compromised, and we had all of our accounts locked that were linked, which was a huge inconvenience. And then we had to go and reset up payment details for our software subscriptions. Now, as an accountant, we have quite a lot of different tools that we use, and I think we had to go and change the payment details for 25 to 30 different organizations. Some were a lot easier than others to change. Now, if that happened again, we'd have to go through that whole process again as well, which we having been through it once, there's no way we want to do it again. So one of the things that Airwallex has is the ability to set up an expense card, which we do, and we now have a separate expense card for each of our subscriptions, so that if something goes wrong with that one card, everything else is fine. We don't have to go and change the details, and then if we cancel that subscription or don't want to continue with that, we cancel that one card, and we've got the daily transaction limits, so which is good controls. No unauthorized charges on those cards, which is great. But it's certainly been so much easier to use, particularly when you're subscribing to something new that you're not sure if you want to continue with, or what your concerns are going to be, or how you're going to be charged. It's certainly been good for us, and it's certainly relieved a lot of the headaches that we've had in the past.
Yeah, and like I think one thing you touched on there is the cost associated with that as well. It's like, what does this actually mean to my bottom line? And a lot of businesses forget that a lot of subscriptions that they're paying for today incur additional fees which they might not be privy to. So take Zoom, for example. I know we're not using Zoom today, but take Zoom. Zoom is a USD subscription where if you're paying with your Australian card, you're not just getting hit with FX conversions, you're getting hit with foreign transaction fees as well. And that can range between 5 to 7% on the transaction that you're doing, which over a yearly period can actually stack up to quite a lot. With our Airwallex cards, not only are they free to create, and we can create up to hundreds of these cards at a time, but we're able to avoid all international transaction fees, and our default conversion rate is market leading. So we leave a lot of funds on the table for our clients, which they probably didn't even think about beforehand, to be honest.
And I think a lot of people get caught by this trap that if they're paying for a subscription that's in Australian dollars, that it's an Australian transaction, whereas a lot of those transactions, it's where the billing process is done. So even if you're paying in Australian dollars, the process might be in a foreign currency, and you're still getting charged those transaction fees. And I know that I got quite upset myself when I reviewed a few of our transactions and found out that was the case. Yeah. And certainly thought, well, hang on, it's an Australian subscription. Why am I being charged international fees? But since we've moved across to Airwallex with the expense cards, we've had no transaction fees like that.
Yeah, it's especially when you're starting to think about, especially with COVID, for example, where digitalization is so important. A lot of businesses are adopting a lot of this SaaS platform into their business in order to keep up and running, keep the lights on. And similarly, a lot of businesses are trying to use social media to really find new customer bases for themselves. A lot of these subscriptions and entities are based outside of Australia, regardless if you're paying in Australian dollars or not. So yeah, if there's one walk away that you have from the back end of today, it's review your subscriptions, even if they're in AUD, and I think you'll be having a bit of a rude shock.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to touch back on the guy with the photocopied cards. Like, I think, again, setting up a traditional credit card for an extra employee, there's a charge, often up to $300 with a lot of the banks. There's a time they get just delays everywhere. But I know Airwallex has a physical card that you can give to your employees, and separate cards for each employee. So,
yeah, there's three ways essentially you can have a card. You can have it virtually, you can have it physically, or you can have it on your phone, which is very quickly becoming the way moving forward of how Australians especially are transacting in the marketplace. But all can be shipped to you freely. So once the account is up and running, you can create hundreds of these accounts if you like. Physical cards are really powerful if you're a business owner and you like to go out and you want to obviously show off to your clients or whatever it may be. But with employee cards, what's really popular, especially at Airwallex at the moment, is the Google and Apple Pay piece at the moment. So I work at Airwallex. All Airwallex employees have Airwallex cards, and I've got mine downloaded on my Google phone at the moment. In fact, my manager was meant to come up and see me next week. Obviously, that's probably not going to happen. But what they did to his account, and this is probably a testament to what you mentioned before around controlling that spend that employees might have with cards, is the admin of the account would increase his spending limit and transaction limit for that week to book flights, accommodation, food and beverage, whatever it may be that he's spending on when he's in Sydney. Obviously come to Sydney, see me, see the rest of the team, and then fly back to Melbourne, where from there they can obviously decrease the amount of funds that way after he's used his card. All that just from using Google Pay and Apple Pay on his phone, but obviously from the admin being able to have that control of spend for the employees.
Yeah, and look, you just touched on administration. I know that's been the bane of a lot of companies where they've had employees with expense cards and credit cards in the past. What's the solution? I think that there's an integration with some of the more popular accounting systems. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So Xero, we partner with extensively. We have a close affinity with Xero. Obviously, their client base is very similar to who we deal with, and a lot of accountants and a lot of businesses are very excited when they hear that. So what does that mean is once your account is live, you can seamlessly integrate it with Xero, and everything from balances, transactions, and outstanding reconciliations get fed through on an hourly basis, and it's multi-currency as well. So if you're receiving funds from customers overseas, if you're paying funds in multiple currencies to suppliers, you can select which currencies you'd like to feed into your Xero account and manage it that way.
Yeah, and I think we've reviewed a number of different payment systems and bank accounts, and certainly the ease at which it is setting up the integration with Airwallex and how the transactions come in, it's just been bliss, really, from an accounting and administration point of view. Just it's so easy to manage.
Yeah, and look, just to touch on that quickly, like our vision is to go that step further where we want to empower all businesses to be able to operate globally, no matter where they're located. And that's something which we will continue to invest in is how can we go that next step to give any local business a global platform to operate on.
Absolutely. So, Henry, what kind of savings could you really expect? Like, I know that we spend less on the transaction fees. Are there some examples that we can talk about? I think you mentioned something about the conversion fees or hidden transaction fees.
Yeah. So like I said beforehand, a lot of businesses are not set up well to operate well, I guess, with banks today. And what we see there is a lot of hidden fees that they might not be privy to outside of just the conversion piece. So a lot of banks actually offer what we call SWIFT fees, where it's just a transaction fee from sending funds from Australia, say, to overseas. With our platform, we actually avoid all SWIFT fees, and our conversion rate is actually market leading. So for our common currency, it's a 0.3% markup to the interbank rate for more common currency, so like USD, pounds, euros, and then markup to the more sort of exotic currencies. So you're looking at like your pesos or your Indian rupee, it's a 0.6% markup that way. And so what you're seeing here now is like a journey of funds going from, if most businesses are using like an e-commerce platform like PayPal, receiving funds, and then the journey in which we can sort of use those funds more efficiently. If you're not using Airwallex essentially, and going through that sort of flow of funds from consumer to business to suppliers and employees, it can be quite expensive. And in this case, for just $10,000, it can be about $800 to move those funds. Whereas with Airwallex, it's only $30. So there's a significant sort of drop of costs associated with that movement of funds just by using that Airwallex ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a huge saving. And when you add that up, we're looking at 8% on $10,000. That's a huge cost to any business. And when margins are tight, that's an expense that you can't afford to have. So if we can eliminate that, that would be great. So, are there any other examples that we can have a look at for how we can save on the costs there?
Yeah, well, if you'd like, I'm happy to sort of go through a bit of just a small demonstration, And over the next 5-10 minutes, I can sort of give you a bit of a run through the platform if you like, and
Absolutely.
sort of just show you how easy it is to use and how businesses can actually save substantial funds using the platform.
Okay, well, let's jump in and have a look at that.
Yeah, no problem. So, like I said, once you have an account up and running, you'll be able to have access to the entirety of the platform. So it's important to note, setting up holding an account, maximum spend, minimum spend, there's no cost associated with any of that. The only way that Airwallex makes revenue from the platform is when you choose to convert using the platform. Okay. So which is really important to note, because a lot of businesses sometimes receive, hold, and pay out the same currency, regardless of which countries they're operating in. So in that case, Airwallex actually wouldn't be sort of charging our clients that way a fee. It's only when there's conversions.
Well, actually, Henry, just on that, so you mentioned that businesses are getting paid in foreign currency and then paying their suppliers in a foreign currency. How many of those businesses are operating just with an Australian currency bank account and paying transaction conversion fees in and out?
I don't have the sort of the exact numbers, but I know that that's the prime reason why customers come to Airwallex today. And that's why we've been growing so much, is because, especially with Australian businesses, typically they're selling to the US. So if you're like an e-commerce brand, or you have like a digital presence online, you're usually selling to sort of like the consumer markets, so being Australia, UK, Europe, US. But your suppliers are more in like the supplier market. So it could be like Southeast Asia, typically is your supply markets there. And so what happens there is, like, despite the fact that you being in Australia, you have an Australian bank account, you're dealing with all these other markets and all these other stakeholders. A lot of businesses are getting forced conversions, they're getting fees just to be able to move those funds efficiently. But with us, like, we can really take away a lot of that friction. And it's really simple to use. So like for example, if I'm an Australian business and I want to set up a local bank account in the US, I can actually set up a local bank account with a click of a button. So we can set up global accounts using Airwallex once your account is live instantaneously. And obviously I'm showing you via sort of the Zoom link, but once I've created this local bank account in the US, I can then receive USD into our account to then leverage at a later date. Using the local payment rails in the US. So you're no longer using sort of SWIFT fees, or you're no longer getting forced to convert. You can actually receive, hold USD in our multi-currency digital wallet, which you can see there now, and then leverage those funds at a later date to pay suppliers. Now, the reason I said USD is because USD is obviously the currency of choice for a lot of Southeast Asian suppliers. So obviously we're receiving, holding, and paying out in USD. We can actually freely send those funds to our suppliers in USD without there being any fees from Airwallex.
Right. And how quickly did it take to set up that bank account?
In this case, like if it's just if you're a sole trader, if you're a partnership, company, or even trust, typically the first three, it can be up to 3 to 5 business days.
Yeah.
If it's a trust, usually we have to ask a little bit more information about that. So expect that to be about 7 business days instead.
Okay, but once you've got the Airwallex account activated,
yep,
how quickly can I set up a foreign currency account?
You're good to go. So once client gives us the ability to do that, you can then go in, create your global account instantaneously, where you'll receive funds from your customers. You can obviously save the suppliers to the platform that you'd like to be paying down, and in which currency, and then you can also set up those cards straight away as well. So I'll get to the cards in a sec, but just to show you how easy it is, if I was to go somewhere new, I'm sending somewhere internationally, I can select which location I'm sending those funds to, and I can also select which currencies you would like to convert from and move to. So I might just do USA for this example. But if I was wanting to send funds to the US, I had AUD in my account, I could simply submit this transfer, see all the costs that are associated there, if there's costs. So in our case, it would just be the markup, the 0.3% markup that I discussed earlier to the interbank rate. And you can see below there's no SWIFT fees. You can see how long it's going to take. And if there's any other limitations associated with that, that won't be a problem.
Wow, that's so easy.
Yeah. And then finally is our cards. So like I said, if you're the admin to this account, you can have complete control of setting up these cards and then dictating how you want these cards to be used. Like I said, they're multi-currency Visa debit cards and are accepted anywhere that Visa obviously can, where Visa, which is most merchants. And you can create two different cards. So one can be a company card, like you said, for all those business expenses that you have. And the second could be like your employee card. So, your Google Pay and Apple Pay, and attaching it to their employees' phones. And that can be used obviously for their own expenditure. But it's really simple to create. Oh, I'll just go back quickly. It's really simple to create a card. With company cards, you can select the purpose. So if I had a subscription, I've got to pay down Facebook and Instagram expenditures. I can then set my limit and in which currency as well. So I'm going to set it today at 10,000 AUD monthly. But if I want to change sort of the currency limits, so if I have only USD in the account, for example, I can obviously select that instead. Or if I want to change the different limits, so instead of it being monthly, I might want it to be daily or per transaction or weekly. I'm going to set that to each card and assign each card to then an employee or to the business to pay down funds. And once you've created the cards, you're good to go. So what will pop up is like any other card, like a card that you'd get from your bank, which you can supply details to pay down funds for subscriptions. So it created, like I said, it's easy to create cards as easy it is to close cards. So managing each card that comes through, I could go in and edit my card details. I could freeze it or cancel altogether and then go back and create a new card straight away. So those are the three sort of main features in terms of how businesses would use us today. And like I said, we're continuously developing it so that we can help our businesses save funds. So not just thinking about transfers, but receiving card payments. We're developing our payment gateway in order to facilitate that, regardless of whereabouts you're receiving funds. We're deepening our Xero integration so that we can make that experience as seamless as possible for our businesses. And there'll be new product coming out this year as well, which I can't go too much into detail about, but something I'm really excited about.
Well, we might get you back to talk about that later in the year.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. Yeah, there's heaps coming up this year. A lot of excitement. So keen to share exactly what that looks like come later in the year.
Yeah. So look, I think let's just recap some of the key things here. Is that we've got some huge potential savings in terms of foreign currency fees, and I think you've got this table here, which I think I'm okay to show.
Yep.
So as a guide, we're looking at on if you're transacting 100K in foreign currency a year, you could be looking to save $4,000. Now, as you go up, that's going to increase. You're going to be saving more, so it's well worth using Airwallex just for that alone. But then we've got those other benefits in terms of the security. We've got the no transaction fees on credit card purchases, the ability to create cards, employee cards, simpler administration, quick setup. There's so many benefits. So how do we get started with Airwallex as a business owner?
Yeah, two things you can do. First one would be reach out to Paul. And Paul is working with us at the moment from a partnership perspective. So the benefit of that is that if you work with Paul and he obviously facilitates those account setups, as a client, you actually receive $20,000 worth of free FX AUD, which we won't charge, I guess, when you open up your account. Secondly, obviously, I'm more than happy to answer any questions as well. And then from there, obviously, we're happy to sort of help drive your account moving forward. Once your account is live, we do have a team that sort of helps with facilitating training, onboarding, and just day-to-day management of your account as well. So you're not left in the dark. We're very customer-centric when it comes to onboarding. So we want to make sure that everyone has the right experience when coming on board.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So we'll put the link to how you can get in contact with us and how you can get started with exploring and signing up for Airwallex. We'll put that link in the notes below in the comments so that you can follow that and reach out to us, reach out to myself and Henry. I'm sure you're happy to get involved and help people with the questions that they might have.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone has any other questions about the platform, more than happy to take some time. Like you can find me on LinkedIn. I know that Paul, you probably share my details, but if you'd like to hit me up on LinkedIn, Henry Broad, Airwallex would probably be the easiest search to do on the platform. So happy to go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put Henry's contact details in the notes as well so that you can reach out to him. So there's some great opportunities there for you to run your business easier, save costs, make more profit, and just have more time to concentrate on the core activities.
Absolutely. And like at the end of the day, like when it comes to a lot of the management of funds, like business owners probably want to spend time doing what's important to them and not worry about these sort of things. And this sort of gives everyone that peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A great tool addressing some of the issues that business owners have, and more so in what we now have more of a global business environment that we operate in. We're no longer just working locally in our communities, but the world we engage in, the world we transact in is a lot more global. So having access to these tools and features in a secure format, in a cost-effective format, and easy to use, great solution for business owners everywhere. So thank you, Henry. Thanks for going through Airwallex and explaining some of the benefits for business owners. Thanks for the demonstration, and love to get our listeners to get in contact with you with any questions. So we'll put your details in the notes, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you everyone for tuning in.